this technological singularity we're moving through. We're in it now. The singularity is real and we're in it now. And it can be a source of tremendous joy for everybody, including you. And if you're not having that sense of joy and freedom and sovereignty as you look into this future and see all the things that are happening that are making this future a reality, if you're not in a state of joy, you've got some work to do, because it is a joyful experience, and it can be, that joyful experience can be yours. Welcome to another episode of AI in Spirit. This series of videos on the Positively Focused YouTube channel focuses on the convergence of technology, primarily artificial intelligence and stellar technologies, the convergence of those technologies and spiritual awareness. And in this episode, I'm going to be following up on the last video I published in this series, where I was talking about how the technological singularity, the AI superabundant future we're moving into, is a spiritual expansionary experience, not a technical one. And in the last video I talked about this. I talked about how you and I and everyone else on this planet have come into physical reality at this specific time in order to enjoy the unfolding that we're seeing all around us right now. And we knew that this experience was going to be a joyful experience. And so that's why we came. We also came because we knew that this singularity represented a huge inflection point, an opportunity for humanity to take a massive step forward while contributing to the progress or the expansion of all that is. And so that's why you're here. That's why I'm here. That's why everyone else is here, in order to move through their own individual expansion, and as a result of moving through our individual expansion, contributing to the expansion of all that is at this wonderful moment in time where technology is enabling all of this. And in the last video, I talked about this interview that was featured on the YouTube channel Milk Road AI, this interview with Salim Ismail, who is a tech entrepreneur, very prominent in the AI space right now, who has a very optimistic view of this unfolding future. And in the last episode, I talked about how his perception of this AI future leans more toward the same perception I have at Positively Focused relative to this expansion, this singularity, which is that this singularity, the technological singularity, is a spiritual movement, not a technological one. The technology is enabling the spiritual expansion that is the technological singularity. So underneath the technology is a spiritual orientation, a spiritual purpose, which is the movement, the intention, and the manifestation of humanity coming more into being instead of doing. So in the last video, I played a couple of clips and responded to them. And in this video, as I promised in the last video, I'm going to be playing the remaining clips I highlighted from the Milk Road AI interview and respond to those clips, because I believe these clips are very important in terms of expressing how this convergence of technology and spirit are creating opportunities for us to move as individuals and as a collective civilization into greater levels of spirituality, deeper levels of being. So without further ado, let's take a look at this first clip where Salim is talking about human happiness. Let's take a look at it now.
I guess the real question is, will people be happy?
No, there's a reason for that, though. People are not designed to be happy. We as human beings are crafted and biologically geared to not be happy and not be satisfied, to constantly quest for new things, for better things, for bigger things, to get more land, to get more wives, to have more kids, to acquire more wealth. So if we can solve that internal mental challenge, okay, you look at a poor Hindu person meditating in the villages of India, they've got nothing, but they're perfectly happy, okay? Maybe the biggest truth I've ever discovered about human beings is they'd much rather be comfortable than happy. If you could.
Okay, so Salim says a lot in this clip, and it's all around happiness. And it's important to clear up some of the distortions, but at the same time, also acknowledge that Salim has some accuracy in his opinion. So let's take a look at it. Will human beings be happy in the future? The real answer is that depends. What does it depend on? It depends on where people are sourcing their happiness from. If they're sourcing their happiness from the conditions of their life experience, they're putting their happiness on very shaky foundations. But as Salim says, are people designed to be happy? Are they really not designed to be happy? That's what Salim is asserting. The real answer to that question is yes, they are to be happy. They're supposed to be happy. And the reason why they're supposed to be happy is because every human being, every individual on this planet is an expression of pure positive energy. And pure positive energy, the energy that comprises all that is ultimately joyful. It's rambunctiously happy because it knows, and it has a lot of momentum behind the knowing, that everything always works out for everyone, you included. And so, are human beings meant to be happy? Yes, they're meant to be happy. Their experience of life is meant to be a happy one. Why else would you come into physical reality? You came into physical reality, especially at this time of the technological singularity. You came into physical reality to experience this wonderful period of expansion of humanity, and you knew it was going to be a joyful experience. So why is it that people, as Salim is saying, are unhappy? Why are the people on Earth, some people on Earth, I'm not going to say everybody, I don't want to be too black and white about this, but why is it that a lot of people on Earth are not happy? Why is it that they're constantly reaching for more? Salim describes reaching for more wealth, reaching for more wives, or reaching for more land. The reason why people have desire built in them is because desire and the satisfaction of desire is the process by which expansion occurs. And so desires are supposed to be fulfilled. But if people aren't having their desires fulfilled, then they tend to be unhappy because they're looking at the lack of fulfillment of their desires. And so they're not happy. But that's a conditional kind of happiness. Your broader perspective is unconditionally happy. It is not basing its happiness on the conditions of your life experience. And you can have that experience too. And it's interesting because Salim describes this toward the end of his clip, where he talks about the Hindu who is meditating and is happy. That person doesn't have any expansionary conditions fulfilled, but he's still happy. He doesn't want more. He doesn't need more because he's unconditionally happy. He's found his happiness in his state of being, and that's available to everyone. That's what we discover in the positively focused framework. I help people realize a state of happiness that depends on no external conditions. And so can people be happy in this AI future that's coming? Absolutely. Can they be happy in this kind of tumultuous period that we're moving through as we move toward that AI future? Absolutely. Your happiness does not depend on any external condition. Now, let me flesh that out a little bit here. What is happiness? Happiness is an emotion. It's a state of being. It's an emotion. Where do emotions come from? I talked about this in a previous Raw blog episode, a teaching video. Happiness is an emotion. All emotions result from, as it's a response, an emotion is a response to the state of your relationship between you and your broader perspective. Your broader perspective is that part of you that remains in non-physical as you project yourself into physical reality as a human being. When you do that, you kind of split yourself in two. A part of you remains in non-physical, the rest of you comes into physical reality. While you're in physical reality, that part of you that remains in non-physical has a bird's eye view of your life trajectory. It can see all the decisions you have made, all the decisions you will make, all the results of those decisions you will make, all the results of the decisions you don't make. And it is totally happy about all the decisions you're making. it's also guiding you toward decisions that when you make those decisions, you will end up in the time and space coordinates where everything you're wanting is unfolding without you having to do anything to have those things. And so when you align yourself with that perspective, that broader perspective, the bird's eye view of your life trajectory, that condition of alignment provokes a response in you that feels like an emotion. The emotion that you feel when you have that alignment intact is joy, freedom, empowerment, enthusiasm, happiness. That's where emotions come from. When you're feeling negative emotion, when you're dissatisfied or unhappy, the reason why you're that way is not because of something that's happening in your life experience. It's because your relationship with your broader perspective is out of whack. You're looking at a condition in your life experience in a way that your broader perspective is not looking at it that way. And that's why you feel the negative emotion. So your emotions are designed specifically to allow you to manage or administer the relationship you have with the broader perspective you that remains a non-physical. And when you have that relationship dialed in, you feel happy. So is happiness meant as a human condition? Absolutely. You knew you would enjoy the process of being human when you decided to become a human being. If you're not happy in your experience, in your human experience, it's because the way you're interpreting, the way you're looking at, the way you're experiencing your life experience is not aligned with what you knew you would experience when you came here. So the solution to happiness, the way to unconditional happiness, is aligning with your broader perspective and then living from that place. That's what the Hindu meditator is doing, even though his conditions of life seem to include none of what most people think would make them happy. He's aligned with his broader perspective. You can do that too. And when you do, then your whole experience of life changes. You begin to experience only the positive aspects of life, which amplifies your feeling of happiness. So Salim doesn't have it right. Human beings are meant to be happy, you included. And it's interesting, at the end of the clip, he says, humans would rather be comfortable than happy. And I would say that's true. Humans prefer to be left alone, even if they're unhappy. It's not usual. It happens, but it's not usual for people to get themselves out of trouble. The momentum that got them there in the first place kind of keeps them in that place. So it's less about comfort and it's more about adaptability. Most people can adapt to any condition, even shitty conditions. And that's what we see a lot on this planet, where people are living in dissatisfaction, discomfort, unhappiness, depression, and they tend to stay there because of momentum. But that doesn't mean they're meant to be unhappy. You don't have to be dissatisfied or unhappy in any situation you happen to be in. It just takes a shift of perspective. And that shift of perspective is all about what the positively focused framework is about. Okay, let's take a look at the next clip. The next clip, he's going to be talking about, Salim is going to be talking about a couple of key mindsets and that are necessary and able to move into this AI future, move through the technological singularity, and feel optimistic about what's happening. Let's take a listen, and then I'll come back and respond to what he says, because it's all really good.
Third, an abundance mindset. Recognize that we're moving towards an abundance world. The final one I'd recommend is a gratitude mindset. Okay, we kind of are geared from biology to live in scarcity. Okay, we're always worried and freaked out that the tiger may come and steal our baby, or somebody's going to attack us from the next village, et cetera, et cetera. And our amygdala runs our world. Therefore, we get tagged by bad news. You see this in Hollywood, where the future of technology is always portrayed as dystopian, right? You have the robot overlords come and take over the world. You have Skynet, the Matrix, the Terminator. And if we're lucky, we're pets. And if we're unlucky, we're food. It kind of always shows up in that way. But actually, we're augmenting the human experience with technology in an amazing way, if you look at the actual rollout of technology. And so the world is getting better in a radically place. The only place where the world is not getting better is climate change.
Okay. Salim says a lot in this clip. The first things I want to point out are the fact that he is describing as key mindsets for moving into this future in optimism are an abundance mentality and a mentality of appreciation and gratitude. This is why I'm saying that this future we're moving into is a spiritual expansionary experience more so than a technological one. The technological singularity is a spiritual experience. And in order for you to see that and to enjoy the experience, Salim is arguing that you have to have an abundance mindset, a mindset of appreciation, and a mindset of gratitude. And he's right. Your broader perspective knows that the world you currently live in is abundant and getting better every moment. And it also knows that the future is the same way. The technological singularity that is manifesting right before us is an abundant, hyper-optimistic future. But it's hard for people who are not in happiness consistently to see it that way. And this is why it's important. This is why Salim is saying an abundance mindset, an appreciative mindset, and a gratitude mindset is important. If you look at the world around you right now, there are a lot of people who have the opposite of those three mindsets. And as a result of that, they're vilifying Elon Musk. They're vilifying the people on the other side of the political spectrum. They're vilifying people who do not believe the way they do. In other words, they can't see the perfect unfolding that is us moving into the future. But when we get into this future, when this future is fully fleshed out, there's going to be a lot more room, a lot more bandwidth, mental bandwidth, for us to figure out where our joy comes from. It comes from being. And in that state, this new future we're moving into, because we're going to have more time on our hands, more people are going to, I believe, are going to start to look at where their happiness really comes from, which, as I said in the previous video, which is why people like me are on the planet. We're here helping to prepave, to prime human consciousness to be able to embrace the future we're moving into as we move into it. And once we get there, be able to further embrace the joy that has manifested for us. Now, you don't have to go very far to see that most human beings have a lot of work to do in terms of realizing their joy. You can just look at the comments on my videos and see that people are having a hard time finding excitement, passion, optimism, and joy in this technological singularity we're moving through. And so there's a lot that people are going to find challenging as they move more into this reality we're moving into. It's going to get a little worse before it gets better, and people are going to find themselves struggling with the worst that it's getting as people start losing jobs and as the governments start kind of losing their grip on how they're going to run an economy that is based on old paradigms that are being replaced lickety-split by paradigms that are the future. And that destabilization that's going to occur, that's why Salim is talking about it being important to cultivate an abundance, appreciative, and gratitude mindsets. If you're interested in developing those concepts now, those mindsets now, there are lots of people on the planet who are offering the same kind of information that I'm offering. So it's available to you. The last thing that Salim talks about in this clip is about the tendency of Hollywood to create movies about the future that are dystopian. And I want to talk about that for a minute. It's this artists focus on negative stories, because negative stories garner attention. There's a lot of momentum of pessimism amongst humanity. It's interesting because if that momentum was dominant, human beings would have wiped themselves off the earth a long time ago. But there are more points of consciousness. There are far more points of consciousness on the planet than there are human points of consciousness. And all those other points of consciousness, I'm talking about everything from dirt consciousness to bacteria consciousness to plant consciousness to animal consciousness to molecule consciousness. All those consciousnesses are pure positive energy, and they are much more stable in their positivity than human consciousness. And so because of that, the dominant momentum on this planet is pure positive energy. It's optimism and movement toward more positive expansion. But human beings have some chronic momentum of negativity going on within them, and artists are among those who have that going on the most. And that's why they create, many of them, not all of them, create stories that are dystopian, like The Terminator and The Matrix, etc. They know that those movies are going to resonate with their audiences because they know their audiences buy those kinds of tickets to those kinds of movies. They find satisfaction in that kind of contrast. But at another level, what's happening when artists create those kinds of movies, the dystopian ones, is human consciousness is collectively processing through movies circumstances that they'd rather not experience in real life. It's kind of like dreaming. And so there's a benefit to these dystopian movies. But when human beings begin to interpret those dystopian movies like The Terminator or The Matrix as predictions of the future, then they get into this screwy place where they have disconnected from the pure positive momentum that dominates on this planet and begin to do themselves a disfavor by focusing on that negative momentum. Because when they do that, they can't help but see through that negative momentum. The lens through which they're seeing what's unfolding on the planet gets tinted, gets kind of focused through that lens. And so all they can see is the negativity. They can't see the positivity. That's why when some people look at Elon Musk, for example, they see a villain instead of an angel. Now, that might provoke some people. I'd love to see your provocations written in the comments so we can talk about that at length. So, human beings have this tendency to lean toward pessimism, even though, as Salim says, the past demonstrates positive expansion. Life has gotten better for all of us throughout time, and that will continue to be because the dominant energy on this planet and in all that is pure positive energy. And so this future we're moving into that the tech entrepreneurs are calling the technological singularity, which is actually a spiritual moment of massive inflection, that future we're moving into is extremely positive. And so I believe the reason why Salim is arguing for having an abundance, gratitude, and appreciation mentality is because when you get into that place, you align with and are able to see through a lens based on abundance, appreciation, and gratitude. And when you do that, then you're able to see everything that's happening as positive, which it is. It's so good. It's so good. So in this clip I just played, he touches a little bit on this amygdala. So I'm going to play the final clip here where he goes into detail, in his opinion, on this phenomenon that science describes, this amygdala, the part of the brainstem that, according to science, regulates our fear response. So I'm going to play the clip and then I'm going to come back and respond to that one because that's an important one to take a look at also. Let's take a look at it.
Immune system, because people go, oh my God, new technology. And this is related to a very old amygdala that we have at the back of our brain, right? We have this little organ. I can't remember if I talked about this last time, but we have this little organ at the back of our brain that's scanning for danger. It's a survival mechanism we evolved when we were running around the plains of Africa. If you heard a noise in the bushes, you ran because bad news could kill you, right? Good news doesn't kill you. If I missed a piece of good news, I missed some fruit that I could eat. So we are hyper sensitive to danger and negative news. When we come across something new, we relate to it as unknown, we relate to it as dangerous, and therefore ban the autonomous car, ban the humanoid robot, ban crypto, ban whatever.
Okay, let's clear up this distortion. Primarily, this distortion that exists primarily because of science. Back in the caveman days, human beings were more tuned to the natural rhythms of life experience than, I almost said than we are today, but that's not true. We're still attuned to it. We just block it out because our focus tends to be on physical reality instead of non-physical, which is where the rhythm of the universe, the fundamental spiritual principles underlying how physical reality works, that's the rhythm of the universe. And so back in the olden days, when we were cavemen living in caves and in the bushes and whatnot on the plains, we were much more tuned into those fundamental principles. And back then, we weren't running around in fear. We were connected. We understood the unfolding of the universe. And so we were guided by our broader perspective to circumstances where we found the food we needed, where we found the plant medicines that healed our wounds, where we found or encountered other plants that allowed us to have hallucinatory spiritual experiences. All of these stories about human beings in the olden days, the caveman days, running around in fear with predators constantly on the hunt for them, that was not what was happening. Human beings were in tune, and they were moving through their life experience in freedom and sovereignty. And as a result of being connected to their broader perspective, which is what everyone was back then, because they were less distracted from that connection to all that is, they were guided to everything that they needed and lived in freedom and sovereignty. So there was this amygdala that science likes to point to is not the seat of some sort of fear response, because the human beings back then knew there was nothing to fear. They were guided by their broader perspective. Now, those of them that were eaten by tigers or leopards or whatever predated, whatever hunted human beings, those human beings that were consumed by other human beings, that's just part of the natural cycle of life. And every one of those human beings, just like any other prey animal, every one of those human beings willingly gave itself up as food to the creature that ate it. Everybody chooses their exit. Everybody chooses their death. Seth likes to say, every death is a suicide. So the circumstances of one's death is not a surprise at the deepest parts of them. They may act surprised when it happens, but it's not a surprise. So this amygdala explanation for why people fear is not accurate. Fear is an emotion. Fear shows up when you're telling yourself a story about what you're experiencing that is different from what your broader perspective knows about what you're experiencing. Now, you can be oblivious to what you're experiencing when it's mild, and as a result of that, the universe gives you feedback that gets more and more intense until suddenly you're shocked by the experience you have that takes you out of life. But that has nothing to do with the amygdala. The amygdala is not some ancient source of fear regulation or fear-based behavior regulation. People are afraid or have a fear response when they're not tuned in. That's all it is. I could say a lot more. I'll say one more thing about this because it's important. At the higher levels of elite martial arts, you discover exactly what I'm talking about. In some martial arts, it's called one thing. In other martial arts, it's called another. It's essentially what feels like a sixth sense, where you are so tuned in to the rhythm, the fundamental principles underlying how physical reality works. You're so tuned in that you can predict with 100% accuracy in the moment of a fight what your opponent is going to do. That is the exact kind of skill that, or the perception that the ancient human beings had when they were tuned into their broader perspective. So no, the amygdala did not regulate the fear response. The reptile brain is a fiction. Your ability to tune in to the fundamental principles underlying how physical reality works is exactly the same. It's just as intact today as it was when you were on the plains of the Serengeti. It's just that you've lost practice in connecting to it in this life experience. There's a whole lot more I could say about that, but this video's already gotten kind of long. The 3 clips that I played in this video are showing how this technological singularity we're moving through, we're in it now. The singularity is real and we're in it now. And it can be a source of tremendous joy for everybody, including you. And if you're not having that sense of joy and freedom and sovereignty as you look into this future and see all the things that are happening that are making this future a reality, if you're not in a state of joy, you've got some work to do, because it is a joyful experience, and it can be, that joyful experience can be yours. My clients are developing that joyful experience, and you can too. There are lots of people on the planet today that are offering material like I'm offering. You don't have to come to me as your mentor to get coaching or guidance on how to develop the mindsets Salim is talking about, the abundance mindset, the gratitude mindset, the appreciation mindset. You can find someone out there who you resonate with, who can offer you guidance on how to develop those mindsets. And the key to developing those mindsets is when you do, your life experience will match that new mindset. Because where do you think your life experience is coming from? It's coming from your mindset, how you set your mind. It's so good. Life is so good, and it's getting so much better. And the technological advances that are occurring are the result of spiritual focus. The technological singularity is a spiritual inflection. It's enabling us to move into a future where being is the rule of the day instead of doing. It's so good. Okay, that's it for today. If you have any comments or rebuts or criticisms, feel free to put them in the comments. If you're feeling appreciative of watching this video, put that in the comments too. And in the meantime, I'll see you in the next video.